There are things we inherit without asking. Names, faces, the weight of silence. In 1941, this mansion stood like a monument to permanence, its windows reflecting nothing but the sky, its rooms holding conversations that had ended mid-sentence. The family who lived here vanished on a Tuesday in October, leaving behind a table set for dinner, candles burned down to pools of wax, and doors that had been locked from the inside. No bodies were ever found. No letters explained their departure. What remained was only the house itself, breathing quietly in the dark, waiting for someone to ask the right questions. But some questions, once asked, can never be unheard. The locals stopped speaking their names within a year, as if silence could undo what had happened. Neighbors reported hearing the family's gramophone playing on the night they disappeared, Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat, looping endlessly until dawn. When the police finally entered, they found the record still spinning on the turntable, the needle tracing the same groove over and over, wearing a thin line into the vinyl like a scar. The breakfast dishes were washed and stacked. The beds were made with hospital corners. In the youngest daughter's room, a music box sat open on the dresser, its tiny ballerina frozen mid-pirouette, though no one could remember winding it. Everything looked prepared, rehearsed, as if the family had been expecting something and had decided collectively to meet it on their own terms. The mansion's architecture speaks in whispers if you know how to listen. Built in 1887 by a railroad baron whose fortune dried up during the Panic of 1893, it changed hands 7 times before the family moved in during the spring of 1939. Each previous owner left abruptly, citing health reasons, financial difficulties, family emergencies that were never quite explained. The walls are thick, constructed from limestone, quarried from the property itself, and they hold temperature the way a tomb does, cold even in summer, as if the stone remembers being underground. There are rooms within rooms here, servant corridors that connect spaces in ways that defy the floor plan, and a staircase in the east wing that leads up to a door that opens onto solid wall. The architect's original blueprints kept in the county records office show a room in that location, a nursery. But when builders tried to access it during a renovation in 1952, they found only bricks and mortar tightly packed, as if it had never existed at all. On the night they disappeared, the father had been reading aloud to his children from a leather-bound journal that was later found on his desk, open to a page dated March 15th, 1894. The handwriting wasn't his. It belonged to someone named Elias Thorne, the second owner of the house, a professor of antiquities who had spent his final years translating symbols he claimed to have discovered in the mansion's foundation stones. The journal entries become increasingly fragmented, shifting from academic observations to desperate warnings. They are beneath and do not listen after midnight, and the house was built on agreement, not earth. The family's 12-year-old son had underlined passages in pencil, adding his own notes in the margins, calculations, drawings of geometric patterns, questions without answers. The last entry in his handwriting, scrawled across the bottom of the final page, reads simply, "I understand now. We all do." The dinner that was never eaten remains one of the most disturbing details. 4 places set at the table, roasted chicken gone cold, mashed potatoes congealed, green beans arranged with careful precision on each plate. But there was a 5th setting, one that no one could explain. It sat at the head of the table where the father usually presided, but this plate was empty, spotless, as if it had been licked clean or never used at all. The chair was pulled out slightly, as if someone had just stood up to leave. More unsettling was what the investigators found beneath that plate when they finally lifted it. A circle drawn in ash, perfectly symmetrical, with symbols inside that matched those from Elias Thorne's journal. The ash was cold. The wood underneath was scorched black, burned in a pattern that suggested heat applied slowly, deliberately, over hours or even days. Yet no one had reported smelling smoke, Witnesses who lived nearby provided accounts that contradicted each other in ways that felt intentional, as if reality itself had splintered. Mrs. Callahan, who lived a quarter-mile down the road, swore she saw all 4 family members standing in the upstairs windows at 3 in the morning, motionless, staring out at the empty fields. But Mr. Reeves, who delivered milk at dawn, claimed the house had been dark for days. Newspapers piling up on the porch, curtains drawn tight. A local boy, only 8 years old at the time, told his mother he'd seen the family walking single file into the woods behind the house, each carrying a candle, moving in perfect synchronization like a funeral procession. When search parties combed those woods, they found a clearing a half-mile in, where the ground was unnaturally bare. No grass, no leaves, just smooth dirt packed hard as concrete, and in the center, a depression in the shape of a door lying flat, as if something had been pulled up from below or pushed down from above. The house began to change after they disappeared, subtly at first, then undeniably. Doors that had opened inward now opened outward. Windows that faced east in the morning faced west by evening, though no one saw them move. The staircase in the main hall gained an extra step. Surveyors counted 13 where there had been 12, and photographs from before 1941 confirmed the discrepancy. People who entered reported hearing their own voices speaking from other rooms, having conversations they didn't remember having, finishing sentences they hadn't started. The local parish priest attempted a blessing in 1943, but refused to enter past the foyer, claiming he felt hands on his back, pushing him forward, even though he stood alone. He died 3 weeks later of a heart attack, and his final words to his housekeeper were, "They didn't leave, they went down." When she asked what he meant, he only smiled and closed his eyes. In 1967, a team of paranormal researchers spent 72 hours in the mansion, equipped with cameras, audio recorders, and electromagnetic field detectors. The footage they captured was largely mundane. Empty rooms, creaking floorboards, shadows that moved predictably with the sun. But on the final night, all their equipment simultaneously registered a spike at 3:47 a.m., the exact moment when every recording device stopped working. What they captured in that final minute has never been fully disclosed, but transcripts from their debriefing mention a presence that felt like weight, voices counting backward from 10, and the overwhelming certainty that we were expected. One researcher, Dr. Helen Corso, published a single paper on the experience before abandoning her career entirely. In it, she wrote, "The house doesn't haunt, it waits. And what it waits for has already been there, has always been there, threading through time like a needle through cloth." The mansion still stands today, technically owned by the county but visited by no one except the occasional historian or thrill seeker who doesn't stay long. The front door remains unlocked because locks don't hold there. They turn themselves open from the inside as if something wants to make entry easy, effortless. Photographers have captured images of the dinner table, still set, plates gathering dust in precise arrangements that seem to reset overnight. The gramophone sits silent now, but some claim that if you stand in the right spot at the right time, you can still hear Chopin playing faintly, not from the machine, but from the walls themselves, vibrating through the limestone, like a memory refusing to fade. The family's belongings remain exactly where they left them. Shoes by the door, coats on the rack, a half-finished letter on the writing desk that reads, "By the time you read this, we will have..." and then stops, the pen resting in the middle of the page, the ink long dried. What happened to them was never solved because perhaps it was never meant to be. There are theories, of course. Murder-suicide, secret debts, government conspiracy, but none account for the details that refuse explanation. None address the fact that their birth certificates disappeared from the county records the same week they vanished, or that photographs of the family began to fade until faces became blurs, unrecognizable even to those who knew them well. In the end, maybe they didn't disappear at all. Maybe they simply completed something that had been started long before they arrived, a contract signed by the house itself when the first stone was laid, an agreement whispered into the foundation that required payment in flesh, in presence, in the quiet erasure of names. And late at night, when the wind moves through the empty rooms and the floorboards settle with sounds like footsteps, you might wonder if they're still there, living in the spaces between walls, speaking in frequencies we can't hear, waiting for the door to open again so they can welcome whoever comes next into the same understanding that took them down, always down, into the house beneath the house, where time folds back on itself and Tuesdays in October repeat forever. The first person to spend a full night in the mansion after the disappearance was a journalist named Thomas Garrett, who arrived in the spring of 1958 with a typewriter, a flask of whiskey, and the arrogance of someone who believed fear was a choice. He set up in the library, a room lined with books that smelled of must and something sweeter, like fruit left too long in the sun. His plan was simple: document the night, debunk the myths, leave at dawn with a story that would make his career. By midnight, he had written only 3 sentences, each one crossed out, the words refusing to form correctly on the page. He later told his editor that the house corrected him, that every time he tried to describe what he saw, his hands would type something different, something that felt more true but made no sense. The walls are counting. There are more rooms now than when I entered. I am not alone in my skin. At 4 a.m. he fled, leaving everything behind. Typewriter still loaded with paper, flask untouched, his coat folded neatly on the chair as if he'd intended to return. He never wrote about that night, never spoke of it publicly, but his wife found notes hidden in his desk after he died in 1974. Pages and pages of the same sentence repeated, "They let me leave because I wasn't ready yet." What Thomas Garrett didn't mention in those notes, but what was discovered later by his daughter when she sorted through his effects, was a photograph he'd taken inside the library. The image shows the room exactly as described. Shelves of books, a reading lamp casting warm light, the chair where he'd sat, but in the corner, barely visible in the shadows, there's a figure. Not standing, not sitting, but occupying space in a way that suggests neither. It's blurred, as if it moved during the exposure, but the rest of the image is perfectly sharp. Experts who examined the photograph confirmed it hadn't been doctored, and the figure's proportions are wrong, too tall, limbs at angles that don't match human anatomy. What disturbed Garrett's daughter most wasn't the figure itself, but what she noticed in the books behind it. The spines were facing backward, titles hidden, as if someone had turned every single volume around. She checked the photo against descriptions of the library from estate records. In every official photograph taken before 1941, the books face outward, orderly and catalogued. After the family vanished, every visitor who photographed that room captured the same impossible detail. Books reversed, knowledge turned inward, hiding. There's a well on the property discovered in 1972 when the county considered demolishing the mansion. It sits 200 yards behind the house, hidden by overgrowth so thick it seemed planted intentionally to obscure. The well is deep. Surveyors dropped weighted lines that never hit bottom, reeling out 400 feet of cord before giving up. But what made them seal it with concrete wasn't the depth, it was the sound. When they lowered a microphone into the darkness, they recorded audio that shouldn't exist. Wind moving through the shaft, yes, but also rhythmic tapping, like fingernails on wood. And beneath that, barely audible, a voice repeating numbers in sequence. 1, 5, 9, 13, 17, prime numbers ascending, spoken in a child's voice that matched recordings of the family's youngest daughter, even though those recordings had been made 30 years earlier and the quality was identical, as if she'd been down there the entire time, counting, waiting, performing some task that required precision and endless patience. The engineers who heard it refused to return, and the audio was archived in a basement filing cabinet where it remained until a university student found it in 2003 and posted it online. Within 48 hours, the file had corrupted itself on every server, replaced by static and a single word repeated underneath: soon. In 1985, a family tried to move in, drawn by the low price and the challenge of renovation. They lasted 9 days. The mother, Sarah Lindholm, kept a diary during their stay, entries that begin optimistically and deteriorate into something else entirely. Day 1 describes the beauty of the architecture, the potential they see in restoring it. Day 3 mentions small oddities, keys going missing, then reappearing in locks they'd never fit, doors that resist opening in the morning but swing freely at night. By day 5, her handwriting changes, becomes smaller, more cramped. The children say there's a room we haven't found yet. They hear someone singing behind the walls during dinner. I pretend not to hear it too. Day 7's entry is a single line. We are not fixing the house is fixing us. On day 9, they left before sunrise, and Sarah Lindholm refused to discuss what happened except to say, "It showed us who we'd be if we stayed. We didn't like what we saw." Years later, her daughter revealed that on their final night, every member of the family had dreamed the same dream. They were standing in a room filled with mirrors, but their reflections were living separate lives, growing older while they stood still, and in every reflection they were smiling in a way they'd never smiled before, as if something else had learned to wear their faces. The mirrors in the mansion deserve their own consideration. There are 17 of them, scattered throughout the house, above mantels, in hallways, one enormous gilt-framed piece in the main foyer that reflects the staircase in perfect clarity. But photographs never capture what they reflect accurately. Images taken of the foyer mirror show the staircase, yes, but with subtle differences. An extra painting on the wall that isn't there in reality. A grandfather clock that doesn't exist. Occasionally, a figure ascending the stairs that vanishes when you look directly at the mirror itself. In 1996, a team of artists tried to remove the foyer mirror for an exhibition on American Gothic architecture. But when they loosened it from the wall, they found an inscription carved into the plaster behind it. What watches from within has been watching since before. The handwriting matched samples from the family's father, but dated to 3 years before they'd moved in, before they'd even seen the house. When the artists repositioned the mirror and looked into it again, they saw themselves, but delayed. A 2-second lag between movement and reflection, as if the mirror had to check with something else before deciding what to show. They left it hanging. No one has tried to move it since. The attic was never properly searched in 1941, largely because the entrance, a pull-down ladder in the second-floor hallway, appeared sealed shut, painted over so many times the seams were invisible. But in 2001, during a structural inspection, an engineer noticed something. The ceiling directly above where the ladder should be was warmer than the surrounding area, as if heat rose from below instead of above. When they finally pried open the access, they found the attic exactly as expected, dusty, cobwebbed, filled with forgotten furniture, but also discovered something impossible. There were windows in the attic, 4 of them, each facing a different direction, and through them you could see the property as it had looked in different eras. The north window showed the mansion surrounded by virgin forest, no roads, no neighboring houses. The south window revealed the land cleared and cultivated, rows of corn stretching to the horizon. The east window looked out on a town that had never been built there, complete with church steeples and bustling streets. The west window showed only darkness, as if that direction had been erased or hadn't been created yet. When the inspector tried to photograph this, his camera malfunctioned, and when he returned with another team the following week, the windows showed the same view in all directions. The present-day property empty and waiting. But in each window's lower corner, pressed against the glass from the outside, was a small handprint. Too small to be an adult's, too perfect to be accidental. There are sounds the house makes that aren't structural settling or wind through eaves. Former caretakers, those who lasted more than a few weeks, report hearing conversations late at night, not words exactly, but the cadence of dialogue, question and answer, agreement and disagreement, coming from rooms that stand empty when investigated. One caretaker, Harold Voss, who worked there from 1978 to 1981, recorded what he heard on a cassette tape that later analysis revealed contained voices speaking backward. When reversed and played normally, the conversation was between two people discussing someone named Harold, debating whether he's the one or if we should wait for someone who understands. The disturbing part is that this recording was made during Harold's first week on the job, before he'd told anyone his name. He quit the day he played that tape in reverse, and when asked why, he said only, "They knew I was coming before I did. They've been preparing." Another caretaker reported that the grandfather clock in the drawing room, the one that appears in mirror reflections but doesn't exist in reality, could be heard chiming every night at 3:47 a.m., the exact time the paranormal researchers' equipment failed in 1967. 7 chimes, always 7, though that hour should produce 3 or 15, depending on whether it's a.m. or p.m. 7, repeated nightly, counting something that isn't time. In the basement, accessible only through a door in the kitchen that swells in humidity and resists opening, there's evidence of construction that predates the house itself. The foundation stones are massive, irregular, carved with marks that geologists have identified as pre-Columbian, though no indigenous settlement was ever recorded on this land. The floor is dirt in some places, stone in others, and in the farthest corner, there's a section of smooth slate that remains ice-cold regardless of season. On this slate, someone scratched words in Latin, translated by a professor from the State University as "passage granted, passage owed, passage eternal." Beneath this inscription, the stone is stained dark, iron content in groundwater, according to official reports, but the pattern is too specific, too deliberately circular, like something was poured or something seeped up from below. Directly above this spot, on the first floor, is the dining room where the family's last meal grew cold. Directly above that, on the second floor, is the master bedroom, where their clothes still hang in the closet, arranged by season, as if they'd planned to return. And directly above that, in the attic, is the floorboard that's warmer than the rest. Whatever happened to the family happened vertically, through layers of the house, moving between levels in ways that stairs and doors don't accommodate. There's a theory, never officially endorsed but whispered among researchers who've studied the case, that the mansion isn't haunted by the family, but was always haunted, and the family was simply the latest offering. Documents found in historical archives reveal a pattern. Every 23 years, someone vanishes in or near the property. In 1849, a surveyor disappeared while mapping the land. In 1872, a construction worker fell from scaffolding and his body was never recovered despite witnesses seeing exactly where he landed. In 1895, Elias Thorne, the journal keeper, was last seen entering his study and was never found, though his journal remained on his desk, still open, ink still wet. In 1918, a groundskeeper simply walked into the woods and never emerged, despite search parties combing every inch. The family in 1941 fit this pattern perfectly, and if the theory holds, the next disappearance was due in 1964. And indeed, a real estate agent showing the property to prospective buyers was briefly unaccounted for, found 3 hours later, wandering the road with no memory of where she'd been, repeating, "They said I wasn't right, that I'd been promised to someone else." The pattern suggests something cyclical, something that feeds on intervals. And if correct, the next occurrence would fall in 1987, then 2010, then 2033. but records from those years are incomplete, filed incorrectly, or missing entirely, as if documentation itself resists revealing whether the pattern continues or has been broken. And so the mansion stands neither alive nor dead, neither empty nor occupied, holding its secrets in walls that remember and floors that echo with footsteps that might be yours, or might be someone who walked there decades ago, or might be someone who will walk there years from now. Time folding and unfolding like paper creased so many times, it tears along lines you can't see until you try to open it again. The door remains unlocked. The table remains set. The gramophone could play again at any moment if someone were to wind it. And perhaps that's the most terrifying thought, that none of this is dormant, that it's all actively waiting, that the house is patient in ways humans can't comprehend, and that every person who visits, who photographs, who stays overnight, who dismisses the stories as legend is being evaluated, measured, considered for something that has nothing to do with fear and everything to do with function, with purpose, with a role in machinery that was set in motion long before the first stone was laid and will continue long after the last wall falls. Because houses can be destroyed, but whatever made the house necessary can't be demolished, only relocated, only transferred to the next place where ground is broken and foundations are poured and families arrive with suitcases and hope, never knowing that hope is sometimes just another word for permission, for acceptance, for walking willingly into rooms that have been waiting specifically for you, with your name already carved into wood you haven't seen yet, in handwriting that looks disturbingly like your own. You need to understand something before we go any further. This isn't just a story I'm telling you. It's a warning wrapped in history, a map drawn in disappearances, and if you've watched this far, if you've followed every word down into the darkness with me, then you've already done something irreversible. You've paid attention. And attention, in places like this, in stories like this, is the same as permission. The mansion doesn't care whether you believe in it or not. Belief is optional. Awareness is what matters. By knowing its address, by hearing the family's names, by visualizing those rooms in your mind as I describe them, you've created a connection, thin as spider silk, but strong enough to pull. I've seen the comments on videos like this, people joking that they'll visit, that they'll spend a night, that they're not afraid, but fear isn't what the house wants. It wants witnesses. It wants people who will carry it forward, who will speak its name, who will ensure it's never forgotten. And now you're one of them, whether you intended to be or not. The mansion has been scheduled for demolition 4 times, in 1963, 1979, 1998, and 2015. Each time, the process began normally. Permits filed, contractors hired, equipment brought to the site. And each time, something prevented completion. In 1963, the demolition crew's foreman had a stroke the morning they were set to begin, and the project was cancelled out of respect. In 1979, the wrecking ball struck the east wall 3 times, and each time the impact sounded wrong. Not the crack of breaking stone, but something hollow, resonant, like striking a drum made of bone. The crew refused to continue, citing equipment malfunction, though every machine tested perfectly afterward. In 1998, the county discovered that the property deed had a clause buried in legal language from 1887, stipulating that the house could never be destroyed until the contract is fulfilled. Though no one could locate documentation of what contract this referred to or who the parties involved were. And in 2015, the week before demolition was scheduled, 3 separate people, unconnected, living in different states, contacted the county office to claim they were descendants of the original builder, and that destroying the house would violate terms of an inheritance they were prepared to litigate. None of them could prove their relation, and genetic testing showed they shared no common ancestry, yet their claims were identical down to the wording, as if they'd been given the same script, as if something had instructed them on exactly what to say. Let me tell you about the photographs that won't develop. Dozens of people have tried to document the mansion's interior with various cameras, film, digital, instant, and while the technology captures images, the content is never quite right. Figures appear in doorways that were empty when the shutter clicked. Shadows fall at impossible angles, defying the light source. Most disturbingly, some photographs show the rooms occupied. Furniture in different arrangements, paintings on walls that are bare in reality, and occasionally people sitting calmly in chairs, reading or talking, dressed in clothing from different decades. A photo taken in 2008 shows the dining room with the family seated at their eternal dinner, faces turned toward the camera. Expressions not quite happy and not quite afraid, but expectant, as if they'd been waiting for the photographer to arrive and were pleased the appointment was finally kept. The person who took that photograph, a paranormal blogger named Jennifer Hale, posted it online with a caption, "I don't remember seeing them when I was there." Within an hour, she updated, "I don't remember going there at all." Within a day, she deleted her entire blog, shut down her social media, and moved to a different state without telling anyone where. But the photograph remains archived on servers she no longer controls. And if you look closely at the family's faces in that image, you'll notice they're not looking at the camera, they're looking slightly to the left of it, at something standing just outside the frame, something that would have been directly beside Jennifer Hale when she took the shot. Here's what keeps me awake. The house is learning. Each visitor teaches it something new about how to be more effective, more convincing, more difficult to resist. In early accounts, the phenomena were crude. Loud noises, objects moving, obvious attempts to frighten. But as decades passed, the manifestations became sophisticated, psychological, tailored. It doesn't just scare people anymore, it makes them curious. It offers mysteries that beg to be solved, puzzles that suggest if you're just clever enough, persistent enough, brave enough, you'll uncover the truth. And people fall for it every time because we're hardwired to seek patterns, to believe that mysteries have solutions, that doors can be unlocked if we find the right key. But what if the mystery is the trap? What if every attempt to solve it just draws you deeper into something that doesn't want to be solved, but wants to be fed? Not with fear, but with obsession, with the specific energy that comes from human minds working desperately to understand what was never meant to be understood. The house has had over a century to perfect this, and every investigator who came looking for answers was really just a student, teaching it how to be a better predator. There's something I haven't told you yet, something I've been avoiding because saying it out loud makes it more real. The pattern of disappearances, the 23-year cycle I mentioned earlier, it's not random, and it's not just about the mansion itself. When researchers mapped every disappearance connected to the property and expanded the search to include the surrounding county, then the state, then the entire region, a pattern emerged that's far more disturbing. The 23-year intervals hold, but they're not isolated incidents, they're epicenters. Within a 100-mile radius of each disappearance, there are dozens of smaller events. People going missing for hours and returning with no memory. Individuals reporting vivid dreams of a house they've never visited. Children drawing pictures of the mansion's interior with one of them sitting down, then another, then the third, as if compelled. The fourth student was screaming, "No, no, we talked about this, we agreed not to," but also moving toward a chair. Then static. Those 4 students were found 6 hours later, sitting in their car in the college parking lot, engine running, hands on the steering wheel as if they'd just arrived. None of them remembered entering the mansion. Their live stream had never happened according to their phones. No video file, no internet history, no record of the broadcast, despite thousands of people having watched it live. But those viewers saved clips, shared them, archived them, and when analyzed, those clips showed something impossible. In the final frames, as the 4th student sat down at the table, a 5th figure appeared in the empty chair. It's blurred, indistinct but human-shaped. And when the camera panned across the faces, 4 students stared blankly ahead, while the 5th figure turned toward the camera and waved. Just a small wave, fingers moving slowly, like someone greeting a friend they'd expected to see. The students, when questioned separately, all said the same thing. We don't remember going, but we remember leaving. When asked what they meant, they grew agitated, insistent. We remember leaving. We remember walking out, getting in the car, driving away. We did leave. But then, quieter, uncertain, didn't we? 3 of them have since moved to different parts of the country without maintaining contact with each other. The 4th still lives locally and, according to people who know her, visits the mansion once a month, parks outside, sits in her car for exactly 1 hour, then drives home. When asked why, she says, "I'm checking if it's still there." When pressed on what it is, she won't answer. So here we are at the end of this telling, but not the end of the story, because stories like this don't end. They just wait, patient and hungry for the next person to discover them, to become fascinated, to share them with others who will share them further, spreading awareness, like a signal that something is listening for. You've made it this far, which means you're either brave or curious or maybe both, and those are exactly the qualities that places like the mansion appreciate most. I can't tell you not to think about it because that's impossible now. The images are in your head. The names are stored in your memory. The address exists in that part of your mind that remembers things even when you try to forget. And maybe that's fine. Maybe nothing will happen. Maybe you'll close this video and move on with your life, and the mansion will remain just a fascinating story you once heard. Or maybe tonight, when you're falling asleep, you'll dream of walking through rooms you've never seen, but somehow recognize, and you'll know exactly where to turn, which doors to open, and you'll find yourself sitting at a table that's been set for dinner with a plate in front of you that's spotless clean waiting. And in that dream, you'll remember something important, something you forgot the moment you woke up. But that lives in the part of your mind the mansion touches. You've already been there. You're already expected, and the only question left is when you'll stop resisting and finally come home. The door, after all, has always been unlocked. For you, specifically, by name.